Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
Grant, let's go back a little into your history with Massmart. You joined the company in 1998 and very quickly moved to a position where you headed up mass discounters. Now, according to the market commentators out there, you made your mark when you started restocking in a downturn environment, and that worked out for you. Can you take me back to that period?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. I was 29 at the time, so the company was not doing well. Mark and Dan Barrett at the time sent me down there and said, the previous CEO has moved on. Would you have a go at this? I looked around. I took a lot of advice from Dan, who's one of the best operators I've ever worked for. A lot of advice from Mark, who's one of the best retailers I've ever worked for, and came to the conclusion we just had to fill this thing with stock again. Gave the confidence to the buyers, pushed the button, put the stock in. The company turned around very quickly, and within 2 or 3 years we were making 200 million rand, where previously we were making 80 million rand.
And from there you went directly to commercial executive, reporting directly into Mark Lamberti. Did you know then that you were earmarked for CEO?
I didn't at that time. Mark did pull me out of mass discounters. The intention was always to send me there temporarily. He put me into a really difficult job as commercial executive up at Massmart, but there were no discussions with me at that point that perhaps I was part of the succession plan. You'd have to ask Mark and see if he was thinking of that. But certainly the position I was given then really was a difficult job because I had to extract collaborative value from the company. And there my experience and now track record as an operator meant that the CEOs of the divisions would work with me, and we really did some really nice stuff over that time.
When you were working very closely with Mark Lamberti, what did you do to get noticed?
Really, I'd really made my mark with game. When I arrived, it was making, I can't remember exactly, 80 or 90 million rand. And when I left, it was the year I left, I think it made over 200 or something million rand. I can't remember the exact number. So I'd already made my mark. The advantage I had when I came back to be the commercial executive was that I now had credibility, operating credibility in the head office with the operators, which meant I was in quite a difficult role, a commercial executive. My job then was to extract collaborative value by getting the operations to work together. But I had the credibility. I'd run one of the divisions, perhaps one of the bigger divisions, and so the other CEOs would work with me, and therefore achieved quite a lot that perhaps other people in that job would have struggled with.
I'm quoting South Africa's Greatest Entrepreneurs by Moki Makura, and she did a piece on Mark Lamberti, and in that it says that in 2007 you took over a company 36 years old which was worth 40 billion rand effectively. That's a hell of a young to take over a top tier company in the country. Did you ever think, wow, how can I be here at 36?
Yes, but I think, I was stunned. Look, the discussions with me had probably started a year and a half beforehand. So by the time I took over in 2007, I'd certainly been given the opportunity to try and learn the things that I didn't know when I was even younger than that. And what Mark did is he gave me those experiences I need. So he started introducing me to industry and getting used to that. I started speaking to shareholders and got used to that. I started doing public presentations and got used to that. I took over the chairmanship of Mass Cash, and so I had a sort of a trial run of having a serious divisional CEO like Robin Wright reporting to me. He really gave me sort of a baby steps succession to get me ready. So by the time I hit the job in 2007, the strategy was already as I would want it. The team was already restructured into the people and the structures that I needed it. And fortunately, I took over while the company was doing really well. So I had about a year before I really was challenged with anything. I'm not sure that I would recommend that you put 36-year-olds into jobs like this. It could have easily gone wrong. But I think with the support and the guidance of the board and Mark, we got a little bit lucky, but I think we did our job as best as we could.
And hindsight's always a perfect science, and if you look at the performance of Massmart, obviously you have done an incredibly good job. Are there any mistakes that you can look back now to and say, I would have done that differently?
Yeah, there's been a few mistakes.
There always are.
At one stage, by the way, I in the company, I'm known to be the person who stopped Macro opening stores in regional towns. I thought it was a bad idea. I've changed my mind, and now we're opening macro stores in regional towns. Now, that may have been a mistake, that may not have been, but certainly I've had to change my mind on it. I have on occasion bought too much stock. So, I got lucky the first time I did that in game. In a few years after that, I overbought by about 500 million rand in a year. And that caused me problems for a couple of years. So I made that mistake. We tried to sell Shield once on reflection. Fortunately, that didn't work. On reflection, had we sold Shield, we'd have given up perhaps our food retail strategy. So, I was certainly wrong on that, and I could carry on and on, but it's not good for my career.
The tough economic environment, that hit us head on. There was no visibility. Nobody saw it coming. How did you react in your position as CEO at Massmart?
The thing that you realize is this is what you get paid to do. CEOs
manage through the tough times.
Yeah, CEOs, I think, during the good times, it's a nice job to have. You've got good people, and really you just have to go around patting people on the back, hoping that and checking that we're not doing something really silly. When one of those moments come along, you realize it's time to stand up and lead. And I think there was only one way to lead through that crisis, and that was to not react knee-jerk reactions, to not panic, to not start cutting costs, not start cutting capital. My experience is whenever you panic, the first instinct of anything you're going to do is probably wrong. So, just sit back, be calm, write down the 5 things you were going to do, cross those off and make sure you don't do those, and then just slow down and relax. And really, we almost did nothing through that crisis. Perhaps we got a little bit more conservative on some costs, and perhaps we slowed down some projects. But cycles are cycles. Just wait it out, wait for the cycle to turn, and off you go.
And where are we in the cycle now?
We're actually back into a normal cycle. So I think after the recession, which was clearly there, people expected us to come out into a boom. We were in a boom, we went into recession. We've just come out into a normal economy. We have low interest rates and low inflation. In our business, hard goods are doing very well and food is struggling. That's how it's supposed to be. So I think we're in an absolutely normal part of the economy. I think we have recovered. Certainly Massmart's performance would indicate to me that we're in just a nice, normal, forgetting the craziness of the last 10 years environment.
What about if we see the international environment faltering at this stage? Is there not a huge external risk to the South African growth story?
It is. There's no question about it. What we did learn during the financial crisis is what happens in the world happens here in terms of the economy. Fortunately, the banking crisis didn't happen here, and that was great. So we only had 1 out of 2 problems to deal with. There's no question. If the world goes into double dip, South Africa within 3 months would follow it.
Your leadership style, how do you define that? I see, again, referring to Mark Lamberti, a big emphasis on human capital in the culture of Massmart. Is that something that you believe in, that it's more about the people than the bottom line? Ultimately, the bottom line will follow?
Yes, it's a particularly focused on leadership. Now, I probably learned this from Mark. You can hire good people. That's about good recruitment and remuneration. You can give them good visions and good strategies. That's not hard. But the real thing is to get them to perform. Therefore, you need good leadership. You can take a good person and put them under a bad leader, it's not going to work. So what we invest in most at Massmart is that difference about how to lead and inspire people. And perhaps you asked about my leadership style. Probably the most dominant part of my style is get out the way. Let people do mostly as they want. Let them make mistakes. Be there to catch them. Make sure they learn from their mistakes. But mostly hire good people and get out the way.
In the people that you surround yourself with, when you talk about hiring people, what do you look for? What are the traits that have to jump out at you to say, that is the kind of person I want in my team?
I must tell you that's very hard, and I think it would be arrogant for anyone to say that they actually know the answer to that question. Maybe you have a hit rate of 6 out of 10, then you're quite good. So you want to just hire more good people than bad people. But I've made those mistakes. I've looked into someone's eyes, I've read their CV, I've looked at their psychometric test and say this is a winner, and it hasn't worked. So I have no special secret there. What I know is that if you create the right environment, you attract the right people. That's the most important bit, is you've got to get the good people to say yes. It's easy to get people to say yes. You've got to get the good people to say yes. And so you've already got an environment where people say, if I go and work there, they're going to let me do what I want. They're going to help me and protect me, but I can really go and express my abilities in that company. And then those sort of people arrive. And that's the most important thing.
Is the retail space your passion? As you say, you've changed jobs a number of times. Do you think you'll remain in the retail space?
Yes, I've got the bug. Hey, I mean, it is unbelievable. In my first discussion with Mark Lamberti, he said, "You're either going to catch the bug or you're not." What I really love about it, and I come out of engineering and perhaps the mining industry, is things are so fast. We can have a discussion in this room that we're having this interview in today. We may have something trialed in a week's time. We'll find out that weekend whether it worked or not, and we'll review it and decide whether we have to do something else. And there's very few industries that work that quickly.
Talking about Mark Lamberti, is he going to stay on as chairman over the Walmart transaction should it come to fruition?
Those details haven't been decided yet, but it's certainly a possibility. Walmart have indicated so far that they do want an independent chairperson, although that decision hasn't been completely finalized. And Andy Bond, who's the Walmart vice president, will be discussing with Mark Lamberti over the next couple of weeks the final structure of the board. But that certainly is a potential and perhaps likely outcome. With
this Walmart transaction on the cards, by all accounts, it looks as though it will go through. What does the future hold for Grant Pattison?
Well, for me, it's quite exciting. I've had a great 3 years at Massmart. I don't know what the shelf life of a CEO is. Probably 7-8 years is getting too long.
As long as you add value, according to Mark Lamberti.
Yes. But I do think you've got a shelf life. And certainly I haven't really worked in the same job for more than 2 or 3 years. So, if this job went unchanged into another year, it's going to be my longest standing job ever. But once again in my career, it hasn't worked out that way. What I will be doing next year is a very different job to the one I'm doing this year. And to me, that's hell of an exciting, and I start the clock again. If I start the clock again and say, well, here's a new job again, I've probably got a longer horizon in Massmart owned by Walmart than I would have had otherwise.